Good morning, everyone. What's up? Happy Sunday, I guess, to everyone. Look, very impromptu BRAP rant. Well, actually, really, I can't say it's impromptu because we were talking about doing a rant this weekend. I got with me Hamp, or especially Lee Hampton. What's up, Hamp?
My friend, how you doing?
I'm doing well, man. Having a little bit of Halo Infinite withdrawal right now. Looking to get back on later on today at some point, hopefully. So, although it's supposed to be nice here, so I don't know. I may be outside. I may be outside, just getting some sunlight and playing some basketball, maybe with my 8-year-old.
Go touch some grass.
Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna go out there and touch some grass and maybe touch something else that rhymes with grass later on, if you know what I mean. But no, Hamp, it's great to have you back on, man. And yeah, we talked about doing a BRAP rant, but the promotion of this rant, letting everyone know, is very at the 11th hour here, as I just posted that we're going live about 5 minutes ago on Twitter. So, look, big shout out to everyone in the live chat. Thank you so much for coming by and hanging out with us. I really appreciate it. I see Ice Queen Gaming here. Please do me a favor. Please retweet the link. Let everyone know that we are live. I'm going to drop a link right here in the live chat. And we got a couple things we're going to talk about, rant about. GAAS games as a service. Are they bad? Are they going to ruin the gaming industry? Because I'm actually seeing that. And also, PlayStation 5 significantly increasing their lead over Xbox. Actually, that was something that was talked about in their financials, or their Q3 PS5 or PlayStation numbers that they just released on Thursday, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And then also, look, we talked. If you haven't been following us, we are proponents of Popeye's chicken, because Popeye's is a true fast food chicken place. It's not this wannabe Chick-fil-A stuff, this anti-consumer franchise that closes on Sundays. So we're gonna talk about what Chick-fil-A doesn't want you to know, right, Hamp?
That's right. This is our honest review of Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, we're gonna give you our honest review of Chick-fil-A. And look, I don't know about you, Hamp. I don't know about business, but I know about honesty and integrity. And what I do know is that there's nothing honest about Chick-fil-A. And look, they're just a communist. They're a communist company. And they're probably behind the China balloon.
That's right, which apparently, as quickly as a balloon moves, must be at supersonic speeds. Apparently, it overflew the entire country, is my understanding.
Yes.
Coast to coast?
Yes.
With undetected?
Undetected, and it was allowed to transmit data back to China because, the U.S. would never intercept it and automatically jam that transmission. That wouldn't happen, right? That would make too much sense, right, Hamp?
Very true, very true.
So big shout out to Donald Brown, $5 Super Chat says, I have a question. Is Sims 4 and World of Warcraft games as a service? What do you think? How would you answer that question, Hamp?
I'm sorry, say that one more time, Brap.
Yeah, Donald Brown with the $5 Super Chat says, I have a question. Is Sims 4 and World of Warcraft a games as a service?
Wait, Sims 4 and World of Warcraft. So one of the, I guess, a philosophical question is, do you consider MMOs, classic MMOs, as a game as a service? Since MMOs existed kind of as a category of games before we kind of invoked the games as a service title. Sims, I tend not to think so, but admittedly, I have not touched The Sims in so long. I don't know if The Sims allows for current, right now, microtransactions, or if everything is installable expansion pack. And so, to me, things that have installable expansion packs aren't necessarily games as a service. I just consider them expansion packs, just in that terms of the legacy, business model that we used to have. For instance, so Destiny 2, with the way that it has expansions, I wouldn't consider games as a service, other than the fact that they also sell a battle pass, have seasons, and then have microtransactions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if I would consider Sims a games as a service. MMOs, I mean, I would say those are kind of like games as a service. But probably not Sims 4. Ice Cream Game saying Sims 4 has no multiplayer. So that's a great question though, Donnell. And so this conversation is actually happening right now on social media where people are saying, oh, well, see, there's another games as a service game being canceled, being pulled offline. Therefore, GAAS is the problem. These games are a problem. And I don't necessarily buy into that idea, Hamp, because I mean, we don't say like when single player games fail that, oh, it's see there we go, another single player game failed. Single player games are the problem. Like we don't say that about those games. I do think though that Hamp that with games as a service, games like when they fail, it's because of the game just not either resonating with enough consumers, or maybe there's some issues with content delivery or gameplay mechanics. Maybe the game just doesn't work well. We talked about Halo Infinite. That the issue with that game is not the gameplay mechanics as much as it is just the lack of content.
I mean, I feel like the same rules and dynamics that I've talked about with regards to Battle Royale, which are a subset of games as a service, apply to games as a service writ large. I think there's a little more wiggle room and latitude than, with those problems. I feel like they're more acute on Battle Royales, but the dynamics are the same, which is that, bring a brand new player into the space and they decide that they're going to go free to play, games as a service, they want continuing games, whatever. They're going to make a list of the games that are the most popular. They're going to look at the games that attract the most players. And so you have an inherent dependency in that business model on player growth and to attract the most players, right? Not just some, but in particular, if you're a PvP shooter, again, everybody's going to look at the ones that are the most popular. And when you can't hold on to a player base and have that kind of center of mass on the market, then it makes it very difficult. So, we had Crossfire X shut down, announced that it's shutting down this week. We had Knockout City announced that it's shutting down this week. And I think there was one other game as a service. Rumbleverse talked about shutting down this week. And the problem is that unless you can attract, players that put you in that upper tier, it's just very difficult to stay in business. I've talked a couple times before about kind of gravimetric effect, right? The more players you have, the more players you attract, right? And kind of like the cell phone companies experience when they start losing lots of subscribers, when there's a mass slough off of players, people get less interested in playing. We're playing Halo Infinite right now, and one of the big problems is we keep seeing the same players come up in matches. Right?
That was last night. I mean, I think. Well, was it? No, it was Friday night as well. I think we played like the same team, like back to back, right?
Yeah, we played like in 5 matches. We faced 2 teams. We faced 2 teams twice, and one other team. Wait, one team twice and one other team 3 times. So we saw across 5 matches. We didn't see anything but the same 2 teams. So these games as a service games, if you come out in your Crossfire X and people look at it like, am I going to play that? Am I going to play Halo Infinite? Am I going to play Rainbow Six Siege? Am I going to play, Back 4 Blood? Anything that's kind of in that ilk, people are going to look at, do you have content showing up? Are you doing things to keep a player base engaged? And are you growing a player base sufficient that I'm going to, Valorant, are you growing a player base sufficient that I'm going to be challenged and that I'm going to play enough different people, and I'm going to be part of a big enough community, and I'm going to see enough kind of variance right across the landscape of other players that I run into to one, find other friends to run with, but also so that I see enough deviation right in delta of teams of who are using different tactics, who are using different plays, people who are finding out things about the game, glitches, exploits, tactical advantages, etc. And when you don't do that, and it's a very competitive space, people get disinterested. And This is why I go back to one of the arguments that I've been making about the ABK acquisition, which is if I have Call of Duty and I peanut butter it across everywhere and I make it low cost or no cost for people to play, how is EA, Take-Two, Ubisoft, I mean, how are even large third-party publishers able to gain a foothold right into the space when what we're seeing is that only the top tier games as a service really gain scratch, right? Much less how is an independent going to come into that space, right? And again, that's the critical thing about whether or not that thing has anti-competitive concerns and whether or not it should be further scrutinized, and whether or not it's justified for that thing to be going to an FTC hearing and then potentially later on to federal court.
Yeah, well, Hamp, I mean, I think that's the one thing that people don't really they don't really think about. It's fortunately with the ABK deal, and we've seen that, and we've seen this anytime there's kind of a news update, there's this pom-pomming of people that are cheerleading this deal and wanting to go through, and no one's really ever thinking about, okay, well, what are the potential long-term ramifications of this deal to the industry, to consumers. It's more of, the FTC is terrible and Lena Khan should get fired. And no one's really stepping back and kind of critically thinking, like, how does this impact the gaming industry? Is this good for the gaming industry? Is mass consolidation something we want to see in the industry? And if we start seeing mass consolidation, what does the impact of that mean to consumers? Like, no one's asking those questions. And I think you bring up a great point about, the ABK deal, Microsoft kind of peanut buttering Call of Duty, engaging in loss leader strategies and things like that, and potentially making it difficult for these other multiplayer type games, like you use EA as an example, to maybe get some foot or some traction in gaming. I mean, who's to say that Microsoft wouldn't be promoting, and you would imagine they wouldn't show a preference to Call of Duty when you fire up the Xbox and you see Call of Duty plastered all over the front of your dashboard. Amazon's actually being investigated by the EU for doing something similar by showing preferential treatment to their own products versus, retailers who use Amazon to sell their own products. And I think the FTC is going to be investigating that soon, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, just things that people don't think about, Ham. So I think it's a great point, man. I think it's a great point. But I don't like. But I also see, Ham, like, people seem to think like the industry's only heading down this road of GAAS. I'm like, I don't agree with that. I think there's different business models that have been proven to be successful, and I don't think that the future of the industry is necessarily just games as a service. I have seen some people say that, Hamp, that they feel like this is where the industry is going, and I don't see that. I don't see that at all, Hamp. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there's any merit to that concern?
I'm sorry, BRAP, I got distracted. You're gonna have to ask the question one more time.
Yeah. So some of the concern on social media has been, okay, well, the industry's handing down this games as a service path. We know about, the concerns that PlayStation fans have had about Sony developing games as a service. Oh, they're going to deviate from what they do best, which isn't true. They're not going to do that. They're just looking to, find other avenues of revenue, which they should do. But do you think that there's, any merit to some of the concerns that at least I'm seeing on social media about the industry solely going down this path of games as a service, or do you think that other business models will continue to thrive in the gaming industry?
I mean, I hope what we're seeing here this year will result in a big check fire, right, on games as a service. I know we've had people on this podcast arguing that, games as a service is the way of the future, and people should, largely drop the approach towards, first person single player canned games, and the industry, all the industry is moving towards games as a service. But my whole point of when I brought this up and when I've talked about battle royales, right, and I specifically said it about battle royales, is what has been financially proven out is that the market will only sustain a certain number, right? And then after that, you get below a threshold where you have a number of players where you're not able to make growth, right? Nobody wants to be in this game or in this business making a battle royale or making a games as a service just to have the exact same number of players month after month after month after month, right? The whole point of having the business model is for there to be growth. Now, it's fine for you to hold steady once you are sitting at one of the top 3 to 5 games in the business, right? Once you're a Call of Duty, once you're a Fortnite. But, if you're a Dreadnought, if you are a World of Warships, if you're a World of Tanks, right? For a large part of the time, those games wanted to have growth, needed to have growth. And so hopefully what we'll see, just like we saw a check fire on people starting to understand that everybody and their mother didn't need to have a battle royale, and that everybody and their mother trying to have a battle royale was not sustainable. Hopefully people will see that with games as a service as well. I don't think that games as a service are inherently bad. I don't think that they're going to drag the industry down. But look, the whole industry doing any of one thing is always going to be bad, right? The whole industry trying to make a bunch of Destiny 2 likes is bad. The whole industry trying to make a ton of Souls likes is bad. Taking and cherry picking elements of those game designs and business models are fine. But anytime you have somebody, trying to do, the Indiana Jones motif, right? Back when, if you remember back in the 80s where like every movie was trying to be Indiana Jones, and there were, tons of TV shows that were trying to be Indiana Jones. That's bad. Only so many of those are going to make it, and the rest are going to fail. And to place your bets that you're going to be one of the ones to survive is inherently risky, and riskier than it would be just doing the rest of the placing your bet somewhere else.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Hamp. It's a great point. Yeah, and I'm not buying that. That we like Heath Stevens says, BRAP, that's just everyone following trends. I get publishers are going to follow trends, but I don't think that that this is the absolute future of the game industry. I think there's money to be made in other avenues, whether it's smaller free to play titles, indie titles, AAA single player narrative focused driven titles. But again, I also don't agree with this is this game failed because it was a games as a service game. I don't agree with that, because again, we don't say that about first party games not first party games. I'm sorry, single player games, when those games don't do well. And I think Yeah, go ahead.
We shouldn't link causality, right?
Exactly.
To just a business model. Obviously, games as a service can be successful, but you need to do it the right way. You need to hit at the right point in the market, right? Like I've often talked about, right? Success in any type of major business endeavor or project is often about, again, it's a theory that lots of sociologists are delving into in more detail, right? Is often just a matter of what is the fairly random convergence of personalities, content, and right times in the market, right? This is why, like, doing a Destiny 2, like trying to be a carbon copy of that, is not an inherent correct answer to success, right? Destiny 2 was successful because Destiny 2 was Destiny 2 at the time that it was Destiny 2. And we've joked about how many times does a head coach, right, win a Super Bowl, right? A head coach winning a Super Bowl with one quarterback isn't really proof of anything, right? Building a dynasty and facing different opponents, right, and different player mixes, changing rules in the NFL, right, make things is more of a proof of whether or not you can sustain success. And so the same way, right, GAAS games, can be successful depending on where they are in the market and what else is coming out at the time in the market. So hopefully, we'll continue to see some good ones. Hopefully things like Halo Infinite will get their traction back if that's a model they're going to forge ahead with. But there's definitely good ones out there that will continue to be successful, and new ones that will come along and be successful. It's not, being that business model isn't an inherent reason to fail.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 110%. And big shout out to Broken Games HD. It's kind of I jumped into a tweet that he had put out and made that point. And he's like, basically that's his only point, that, hey, look, these games don't fail because they're games as a service. They fail because there just aren't good games. And, so, but yeah, no, I agree with everything you said there, Hamp. I do want to go to, somebody brought up in the live chat Redfall, and I think we talked about that offline. Redfall requires an always online connection. We talked about this on Crossfire this past Friday. Like, and Slomo and I were talking about, and actually Forte as well, that the progression system is really only so basically the progression system when you play co-op is whoever the host is progresses, and the person that plays doesn't progress through the story. And so there was some conversation around that, like that kind of being a that for me that's not something that that I would want in a game like that. I think about like the progression with Borderlands, where if you played with someone, you still progress through the story. Then I think about Dying Light 2. Like there was times when Mooch would be like, "Hey, do you want to join my game?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to, because I want to progress my story, or I don't want to go back and play that again." It just doesn't. There's no incentive for me. But the other thing with that game is this notion of always online, and some people were saying, "Oh, I can't believe this. This is crazy." And then you always have to be connected online, and then Hamp you always get the argument in 2023 that everyone has internet, which is kind of interesting because no, not everyone has internet. I believe last numbers I saw, about a quarter of Americans here in the U.S. do not have broadband internet. So yeah, you talked about this too, Hamp. Like there's like some people have said like this having to be connected online is troublesome for the game. It's going to kill the game. And then you have one side that said, oh, it's not that big of a deal because everyone has internet. And Hamp, you said this. I heard you talk about this. That it isn't like no one's going to be affected by this, right? And I forget what you specifically said, but I think it was more along the lines of the internet piece, right?
Yeah, I mean, it falls underneath the umbrella of the thing that I always say is that one of the inherent problems with gamers, or more specifically the 70% of the gaming market that's on gamer Twitter, is that those people refuse to believe that it's possible for two states of existence to concurrently exist. And so it can be true that some people will be affected by this, while it can also be concurrently true that for a lot of people it won't be a big deal. But yeah, what I often say about something like this is that the net impact is not zero. And my personal belief in the conversation about games is we shouldn't be dismissive of the people that it does impact. Now again, you can make a market assessment, right, that says that this isn't that big a deal of a market. But when you're speaking in social terms to fellow gamers, I don't think it's right to say everybody just needs to get over it. It's not a big deal. Now again, the ones who run away with it with an exaggeration and say that this is failure, this is anti-consumer, this is big bad Microsoft when they could have done something else. I mean, with every design decision and design choice, any company can choose to do something different. But in the vast majority of cases, companies make decisions based on where they think they will make the most money most efficiently. So the Redfall thing, it's going to create some unpleasantness. It's just going to create some bother, right, with people who are like, well, I don't want to put the time, like you said, I don't want to put the time, I don't want to put 2 hours, right, of my life, of my time, of my gaming time, running around with you when I'm not going to receive credit for it, and I'm going to have to play those missions all over again. And when this topic first came up, I said, this, it's not like this has not been done before. Borderlands behaved like this, right? Where, at least Borderlands 1, where if you spawned into someone else's game, you would still keep all of the loot, I believe, that you gained from that. But when you went back to your, but when you went back to your own campaign, it would be its own instance, right? You would have to replay that content over again. And so, Borderlands to me was hugely fun. So I didn't mind that. But some people might. So, we should allow people to feel how they feel, right? And when they're credible. But I also feel it's okay to put those feelings through the smell test and try and pick up on whether or not somebody's being genuine or disingenuine.
No, I agree. And for me, like that design implementation with the progression with Redfall, it's not for me. I think it's a miss. But I also understand there's going to be other people it's going to be okay with, because they're going to just enjoy playing that game with their friends. But it's not something for me. What is it that you say, Hamp? There's gamers need to understand that there's two tastes. I can't even talk. Two states of being can exist at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, in And to put it in other context, right?
Yeah.
Let's again, it's a different genre. However, it's still relevant in my opinion. Um, for people to poo-poo on a game and say that a game's going to fail because it requires a persistent online connection. If I'm not mistaken, It Takes Two required you to play with a second person and wound up being Game of the Year.
Yes.
So, again, those things can be done, right? And in the Division 2, right, it had its problems throughout its life cycle. Still landed as a pretty popular game, still sold well, still reviewed well. And if those servers weren't online, you couldn't play, right? And I met with that frustration on several nights, right? When I was like, I just want to play single player. I don't need, but one thing that needs to be understood, I think, too, is in the conversation is a lot of people link this to DRM. And again, I think it helps if you recognize that everything's not DRM, that some games now have server-side implementations, and so they have dependencies on compute going on server side. That's where the persistence of the world is being maintained. That's where some of the variables are injected from. So when games have that dependency, they do require that connection. It's not just to keep you logged in for DRM purposes. DRM doesn't require you to be logged in. DRM can be satisfied by having you check in periodically.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's a great point, Hap. That's a great point because I did see a lot of people throw the DRM thing. So it's great that you kind of fleshed it out a little bit for people who are listening to the show who maybe thought that it was more DRM specific. But Hap, I do want to talk about Chick-fil-A here, though. Look, there's something Chick-fil-A doesn't want you to know. They don't want you to know that the real reason why they're closed on Sundays because they're greedy. And you know what I was thinking, Hamp? They should just open on Sundays. Record profits, record revenue. Everybody wants Chick-fil-A. They make a lot of money, right?
Yeah, if the problem is religion, then that seems fairly simple that they could just have the non-believing employees work on Sunday.
Yeah, exactly.
It shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah. Have the atheists work. Right? Problem solved. All the money Chick-fil-A...
But how dare we bring religion into a chicken conversation?
Exactly. But look, and Chick-fil-A, they should just eat the cost. They make money, record revenues. Should eat the cost. I'm also
getting bonuses. Come on.
Yeah, the executives get bonuses. I'm also very upset too that the price for food at Chick-fil-A has gone up. Record revenues.
Well, BRAP, I mean, the cost of chicken has gone up, so it should follow suit.
They should eat the cost.
But the combination of both chicken and gas, look, we need gas to transport the chicken, right?
Yeah, and you got to pay people to transport that gas.
Look, they should eat those. The Russian pipeline's been compromised. The Iranians want to block the Strait of Hormuz. Gas prices are going up and chicken prices are up. All of that combines.
That's all Joe Biden. It's all Joe Biden's fault, by the way.
That's right. It's all a liberal agenda.
Yeah, because the world stage views him very negatively and weak, apparently. I want to say something real quick. Whatever, and not to get political, but whatever side you're on, whatever, if you're a Republican, Democrat, whatever the case is, I don't care. But I do get a little frustrated when people say things like, and I'm not going to mention this person by name. I don't have anything against this individual, and I respect their opinion. But I guess where I get a little I looked at people, where I kind of start looking at people sideways is when they start ascribing characteristic traits that you would to a WWE superstar. You know what I mean? Like saying that DeSantis has bigger genitalia than. I got to be careful what I say here on YouTube. I don't want to get demonetized. But it has bigger genitalia than Biden, and that balloon would have never happened had someone else been in office. And I'm thinking to myself, and the other thing too is and then when you make these arguments, Hamp, and this is the issue I have too. We have all this information at our fingertips, Hamp, right? Literally at our fingertips. Many of us, Hamp, have cell phones. Smartphones, I should say. I think you have quite a few, though, Hamp, right? Maybe 3 or 4 that you kind of cycle through?
I do. I'm greedy, materialistic, elitist. Mount whatever additional terms you want into that.
But we have something called Google. We have news apps. And by the way, I would, if you're interested in great journalism, I would advise anyone that's interested in a great news app to subscribe to Wall Street Journal. Ham, thank you for that. By the way, it's been a game changer.
Yeah, man. And it's cheaper than what's hilarious, just so I can take us down a little tangent. It's hilarious to me that Bloomberg, the rag that it is, actually charges significantly more than the Wall Street Journal for their content, which is less credible and less trustable. So that's just my personal opinion. You can take that and do with it what you will.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you on that opinion, but we have all this access to information. This person tells me, hey, you know what? The balloon's still floating in air. And I'm like, where have you been? They shot that balloon down. It's gone.
Well, those people, you should check and see whether or not those accounts follow MGT, because I think that maybe that's where they get their information from.
Maybe. But I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, you're out here on your platform, your soapbox, and you're saying these things, but you're not even up to speed. The balloon shot down. When the balloon was intercepted in U.S. airspace, it was no longer allowed to broadcast any signals back to China. So it was basically a floating object that wasn't doing anything at that point. Lloyd Metroid says, I never had Chick-fil-A. Is it good? Lloyd Metroid, I would encourage you to check out Popeyes. Look, I'm not going to lie. Chick-fil-A is not bad, Hamp. It's not. The waffle fries are good. Look, Lloyd Metroid, if you like chicken sandwiches, I would say the chicken sandwiches are okay at Chick-fil-A. The waffle fries is where it's at for Chick-fil-A, in my opinion. And the Chick-fil-A sauce and the Polynesian sauce, that's about it. But if you want a really good fried chicken or chicken sandwich, you got to go to Popeyes. Hands down the best.
Look, the reason I support Popeyes is because we just saw Chick-fil-A's first quarter earnings, record revenues, record profits, clear that they're number one leader in the industry, and therefore there needs to be more competition. So, we should let Popeyes and Church's Fried Chicken and what was the place that we just talked about?
Bojangles?
No, but I mean Bojangles in there too. No, what was the place that? They just opened the place in Chicago.
Roscoe's?
Oh, I thought it was something that starts with a C. Anyway,
Raising Cane's?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Those companies should be allowed to merge if they want to merge, and should be allowed to be competitors on the market. Dirty Chick-fil-A money had and throwing out regional exclusives. They won't even invest the money to put double drive-throughs in a lot of their places, and that's just really, really anti-consumer.
That is very anti-consumer. They don't care about your time. They don't care that your kids are in the backseat screaming, "Daddy, I'm hungry."
That's right. That's it's the chicken that doesn't respect your time.
That's why they're anti-consumer. That's why we're against Chick-fil-A on the show. Oh man, I love Hampty. It's funny. Like I don't know if people are catching on to what we're, as the Rock used to say, what we're cooking. But anyhow, yeah, the chicken biscuits aren't too bad, Captain Crunch. I don't disagree with you. They're not too bad, but all right. Well, I forgot where we're at here, Hamp. What were we just? We were talking about the balloon thing, and yeah, I guess my point is, Hamp, with all this information at our fingertips, I just don't understand why, again, people just don't take the time to research specific topics. Like this person was talking about the world stage having a viewpoint of the current president being weak. I'm like, what world leaders have said that? Like, who's saying that? Like, what events have happened that lead you to believe that?
Right, and the analogous extrapolation is this week we got word that The EU had issued, what was the exact statement? EU issues Microsoft with antitrust warning over Activision Blizzard acquisition. And it had kind of been burbling a little bit before, but obviously people are running with this thread all the way out to sea to international waters and claiming that, therefore, that means that the deal will go through. So as we always say with a lot of things, it's always interesting. We always recommend caution and pumping the brakes before people jump to conclusions that a thing is going to happen or is not going to happen based on a signal that doesn't really indicate that is a guarantee.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. Just pump the brakes. Pump the brakes. That's all you. Let this thing just play itself out. But God, Hamp, I hope this deal goes through, because if not, there are going to be some salty people. You are going to see people. You're going to see a January 6th like response to the FTC.
Well, I won't see it because I'm no longer on Twitter. But I'm sure that I'll hear about it, and I'm sure that it will be hilarious.
We will be screenshotting, and I will be live that day, by the way. Somebody actually said to me, "Brap, why are you so against this deal?" I'm like, actually, I'm not. Somebody said that to me because I brought up the case of I brought up what some of the regulatory concerns are. I brought up about Microsoft being able to leverage its adjacencies, like its money, to engage in loss leader strategies, which they're kind of doing right now with Game Pass. And I said, look, sometimes consolidation isn't great for consumers. So just something to think about. I asked somebody to give me an example where consolidation has actually benefited consumers in terms of better pricing, more choice. So again, I don't care where this deal goes through. All I'm doing is I'm just hoping that people just kind of step back and ask those questions, because I think those are fair questions to ask.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I think both of us have just been proponents of, is that, look, there should be an air within this country where hard, challenging questions are allowed to be asked. And you may not agree with it, and I totally understand that. My personal feeling is, sometimes taking people to court and asking them those questions in a place where they have to answer them under oath is an acceptable interrogation method to get the answers that you want. And so, this is a good point to start talking about some of Buck's comments.
I was just about to go there. Yeah, go ahead, man.
and Buck, I think these questions are the questions you've asked for the last several months have been reflective of the type of critical thinking and deep thought that we've been asking the audience to ask. In many cases, there are going to be a lot of these that come up that I don't agree with. But before we get into it, I just want to convey that they are great. In my opinion, they're great questions in many cases. A little more color commentary than I would personally care for. If this were a work conversation, I would have a very direct comment to, let's get through this without the color commentary, or else we can have a different conversation. But you
don't want to have that conversation, yeah.
But for the sake of the podcast, let's try and stick to the merits of the case. So Buck says FTC just lost their lawsuit to block Meta VR acquisition, while Meta is literally losing billions in VR with latest earnings. Sony just reported a massive quarter for PS5 sales despite a price hike. God of War huge, PlayStation earnings up nearly 25%. So please explain how FTC and Khan do not look foolish wasting taxpayer dollars to file lawsuits against Microsoft and Meta. If FTC lawsuit succeeded, and it didn't make sense to me, if she continues to lose, and it is not extremism to want her replaced with new leadership. My first initial take on this is this really conflates a lot of, in my mind, very different issues into a mixing pot where there's not equivalencies or across the board. The lawsuit against Meta and Sony's competitive place in the market, I don't understand how those two relate. And this is the point to maybe strike my first major point. To me, if you're talking about the Microsoft ATVI acquisition and you're trying to articulate points for it, you should be able to do so without invoking the name of Sony. because it's not simply a Sony matter. It's not laying Microsoft down as a sheet of paper and laying Sony down as a sheet of paper and saying, let's compare what's going on with these two companies in the market space and limiting the conversation to that. As I've been saying for a very, very, very long time, and I've said, in fact, again today, that it's a matter of competition on the market. And now, if there's a feeling that Sony, and I've seen some of these arguments, which I don't agree with, that, well, Sony can leverage its IPs in movie studios, and therefore that's, no, I don't think they're the same thing. Microsoft is one of the top five or 10 companies in the world, depending on what day you look at market valuation. They are the number 2 competitor in the cloud space. And then they are they're in the top 5, I think, of revenue gain from the gaming industry. If you're not able to look at top 5 companies on the planet, top 5 companies in gaming revenue, number 2 company in cloud, and able to understand that consolidation around a corporation of that magnitude and size should not be something to be crawled over with a fine-tooth comb, then I don't really know how much more I could explain it to a person. That seems to me it should be fairly obvious. So this topic of wasting taxpayer dollars, and again, maybe my perspective is jaded from having spent a lot of time around government agencies, basically my whole life, working life. It's not like this is the only thing the FTC is doing, right? The FTC has prosecuted, I think somewhere, I think they've challenged somewhere along the lines of maybe 30 mergers by this point. Earlier this year, I think it was like in the low 20s. They have successfully, I hate to use that term, but I'll use that term for the sake of art. They have successfully blocked the majority of them. Not all of them have gone to court. And so this instance of taking one loss of a lawsuit and extrapolating it as if the entire FTC approach has been a failure is statistically, quantifiably, and mathematically incorrect. And the other thing is that should be recognized is that this is not solely an FTC approach. The FTC, in fact, the FTC and the DOJ have split up the big 5 tech. I think DOJ has, one of them has, I think, Apple and Amazon, and the other one has Meta and Google.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
And then quite honestly, I don't know who has Microsoft. I think they're waiting to see which way that one lands based on how Microsoft behaves. But my point is that, and we often talk about, the FTC and the FTC. It's actually, as I mentioned several times before, the Antitrust Division, which is a joint staffing organization consisting of staff members from both the FTC and the DOJ, and then they change membership. They change who is the chair for a given division action against a specific vendor or corporation, based on the number of cases coming through and based on things, like I said, where, there was a strategic intent where they actually divvied the cases up between them. So, this notion that they're wasting taxpayer dollars, in my mind, no, they're doing exactly what they're supposed to be doing. If they weren't doing this, they would be doing it against some other corporation. And I don't think it's fair to say, well, when they lose, that means they're wasting taxpayer dollars. Because then my question is, okay, well, what happens when they win? Was that still a waste of taxpayer dollars? Because they've won the majority of cases and they've successfully blocked a majority of the acquisitions that they've tried to intervene in.
Yeah, that's a great point, Hap. I think you brought up the win-loss record a couple months ago, because people were saying, they've lost many of the cases. That's actually not true under Lena Khan. But, one of the things that we talked about, too, I'm sorry, Hap, were you done talking about Buck's first comment? About his first comment, yes. Okay. All right, he then actually, he said, hey, Hamp, why you not focus? Why you not, by the way, Hamp, why you not? Why you not focus?
I'm going to attribute that. Buck's a very intelligent person. I'm going to attribute that to being a typo rather than a grammatical error.
Okay. And Hamp, why are you not focused on the merits of what ABK's Lulu said instead of who she may be as a person?
I love that he's on a first name basis with Lulu.
Yes, that's great, by the way. He's like Lulu.
And the reason why is, and again, you may not agree, as I've indicated, particularly again by my departure from Twitter, the things I say, I'm not really subjecting themselves to other people's judgment and arbitration, whether or not they agree with them or not, and as proof of whether or not it's valid or true. this is just my personal approach to life and my regard for information. Um, a person who shows themselves as a known bad actor, who has a proclivity to act in bad faith, to speak in bad faith, a serial liar, as the term has been labeled, and in this case, a person who's a PR person. Some people would say a PR hack, who's been educated, and whose discipline and domain expertise is on making arguments, sometimes twisting arguments for the benefit of waging influence, and again has done so in bad faith. I'm sorry, I don't give a pass to a person like that, even if they're making, theoretically, logical statements. We I hate to bring politics back into it, but we had a conversation this week about, Brittany Griner being negotiated for her extraction from Russia versus I can't remember what his first name is, but Phelan, whatever his first name is,
the Marine, the ex-Marine,
yeah,
former Marine.
Yes, yeah. And there are things in that person's past, extreme things where that person knowingly acted in bad faith, and so when I'm making a diplomatic evaluation on where should a country expend its political capital, in the context of prisoner exchanges, that seems a very easy set of math for me to make. When a person, I don't want to call it any specific names, but let's just say given politicians, right, show themselves as often acting in bad faith, I don't listen to what that person says, even though they might be right. They might be in a single instance, factual.
You better not be talking about my lady.
We're talking about Bobert, MGT.
Don't talk about Bobert.
So it's difficult for me to take people like that at their word, and I make a personal choice, as I think a lot of us do, to make a value decision that what that person advocates, I'm not going to listen to. Now, what I would say is the things that I spoke out about Lulu were not a matter of her points in the case. What I was really speaking out about was, as a gaming community, such as it exists on Gamer Twitter, I think it's sketchy and suspect the people that we raise as heroes, right? This is a person who has acted in bad faith, who, because she's saying things in support of what we want from a console war perspective, we're going to raise up. And I don't have a high regard for that. Same thing that I mentioned about Bloomberg, right? This is a publication which has shown itself to have a proclivity to act in bad faith. And so I don't take Bloomberg as a credible source, even though they might on some given Sunday report information that's actually valid. If I see something come out from them, it doesn't get that immediate check mark, right? I consider it suspect. And so I think those are the value decisions that all of us make. Again, I'm not saying that you have to agree with it. You can certainly make your own. But my personal choice is I don't take anything that Lulu Messervy says as on blind faith or as true or as anything to get behind and rally and pom pom.
Yeah, I don't either. Because it's clear to me what she's doing. She's on social media, and I said this. I said this kind of right wing behavior is very similar to what Trump used to do. Go on Twitter, call out branches of the government, in this case, the FTC, which she's doing. Get people, the Xbox community who are following this deal, because she knows they see what's going on. Get those people, get those people that are foaming at the mouth to go at the FTC on social media. I mean, it's already happening. You hear it on the podcast, you hear it on the, you hear it on, you read it on Twitter. When she's like, and she's doing the last thing she said was the FTC doesn't need to be protecting Sony. Where have we heard that, Hamp? That's kind of been a extreme, what I would say extreme, like fanboy type of talking point. Oh, they're trying to protect Sony because Sony's scared. And the other thing that that Buck said here too was and by the way, Buck is somebody who listens to the show. Should mention that, and he does either ask questions or provide commentary in the comment section after every show. So if we definitely appreciate that, Buck. Definitely appreciate you bringing top subject matter to the comment section. But, he said that, many would agree Kotick, the ABK board of directors, and all corporate management need to go. FTC suing to block the deal and accepting no concessions, which you advocated, keeps the toxic ABK structure in place longer.
Whoa, Nelly. I gotta pump the brakes right there. Okay, Buck. And I understand it. Look, I'm on this podcast. I'm on, several podcasts, and I completely get. Look, I often comment that sometimes I'm talking on a podcast. We're live. There are other things going on. I'm trying to read things in feeds and on social media, and sometimes I might say something, while quite honestly my mind is distracted, and then I may not keep it straight in my head what I actually said. So I will also give you the potential benefit of the doubt if it's true that that maybe I said something that you maybe misconstrued. I don't personally feel that I've been advocating for the FTC to block the deal and to accept no concessions. What I think I've said is that given their strategy, which I've read, which they have in their documents, I believe that their behavior has been consistent with that strategy, and I understand it. I personally think, there's a lot of commentary going on in the gaming community that, this is political and therefore it's wrong. And I'm sorry. I'm a pragmatist, a realist, maybe a little bit Machiavellian. And so I completely understand. I've spent, it's not my career, but I spent a ton of time in undergrad. I was actually a history poli-sci double major for a while. And so I understand these things from an academic perspective, or at least I think about them from an academic perspective. The dynamics of politics is acting within the bounds of regulation and law to drive towards a desired outcome. And if the desired outcome is for corporations to, quite frankly, get their shit together right before they step in front of the FTC with a deal that, in the FTC's mind, they should maybe know outright is anti-competitive or pushes that line. And let's just be true, right? The way mergers have gone down in this country, the mentality is for corporations to go to the FTC asking for, it's just like negotiating for a house, right? If I'm going to put a deal on the table for a house, I'm not going to back off of things and give things up the first time I put an offer over. The first time I put an offer over, I'm going to ask for the world, and I'm going to ask for everything to be exactly the way that I want it. Now, some of those, in fact, might be things that I ask for that I don't mind getting torpedoed. They're deliberate MacGuffins, right, that I put out there, and I'm like, okay, if they snipe that one, I don't really care, right? It's a common negotiating tactic. And again, this is my comment from somebody who's been to classes for corporate negotiations, because we talk about these things when negotiating contracts. So in my mind, to me, it's acceptable to have a political regime that operates within the given regulations and law to take action to send a message to Microsoft, to big tech, to corporate America. Now, a lot of people don't like that. And a lot of people don't like that because they don't like it being done to Microsoft, right? But if it gets done to Amazon, right, and Meta and Google, right, then and Apple, then they would have no problem with it. They wouldn't have any comment about it.
Well, no, because there's no intellectual consistency here.
Right.
Like the things that people are screaming about are happening to these same procedures. These other companies are going through the same process. But you're right, because it's Microsoft, then it becomes an issue of they're wasting taxpayer money. That idea of wasting taxpayers' money, or that this is political, or that the FTC is out of bounds. None of that happened until it was Microsoft. That was under the microscope.
Right. So I haven't necessarily been advocating to block the deal and to accept no concessions. But what I have been and will always be an advocate for is that the given government agencies are within their right to use powers that they have been delegated to drive towards desired outcomes, either on a case-by-case basis or at a policy level basis. That is the job of a government agency, right? Is to set a theme, to set a pattern of behavior, and to drive different factions operating within America towards a set of behaviors that they think is best for American citizens and for the country.
Yeah. Real quick, Camp, one of the things I want to bring up that was Buck was talking about Lulu. It's so funny with Lulu. That is her name, by the way. I was wondering. But the funny thing about Lulu, and I understand what she's trying to point out here, that look, Sony, they're top dog in in the gaming space. Look what they did with the Last of Us TV show. They're leveraging their adjacencies with television, the ability to create television movies for their video game IPs because they have an entertainment arm. And she's not wrong in that regard. I mean, obviously Sony can do those things, but what I did agree with her tweet, and what I don't agree with and I'm wondering if Buck has thought about this, is like, look, she doesn't even address the elephant in the room, that the impact of this, the impact of this deal is not on the same level as what Sony's doing by leveraging like its gaming IPs to television shows, like with The Last of Us. Like it's not the same impact. It's not the same. You think about it, this is Microsoft's largest acquisition in the history of the company. It's what, 70 billion? 69 billion, I think. I forget. But it's not the same. It's not an apples to apples is what I'm trying to say. Like the impact of this deal is just on a different stratosphere. And that's something that I see a lot of people kind of skate by, Hamp, like when they talk about this deal. I was having a conversation on Crossfires with somebody a couple weeks ago. They're like, well, what about the Embracer Group? They're buying all these, publishers and developers. I'm like, that's not the same thing. The impact of those acquisitions aren't the same as acquiring ABK, because like you said, Hamp, Call of Duty, sucks the air out of the room.
Right. It's the number one selling gaming franchise year after year after year, even in a year where Call of Duty is bad. Like, even by Activision standards, Vanguard was bad, and it was still one of the top 2 selling video games that year. Like, yeah, that's a significant thing to be concerned about, right? That's a significant thing when you say, I'm going to take the thing that can literally fail in a given year, and that thing will still suck a lot of the available revenue and disposable income out of the market. I'm going to put it in the hands of a multi-trillion-dollar company that's one of the top 5 in the world, and I'm going to expect that everything is going to be okay. Now, again, that may be the case. As I've mentioned before, when I was put on the spot and asked, well, do you personally want the deal to go through, or do you want it, or do you want it not to go through? As I've said, as from my perspective, I'm going to use some lofty terms, which are maybe a little arrogant, but I will just, because I find it difficult to describe exactly why I pay attention to this stuff. I'll say as a gaming industry, student, or as a gaming historian, or whatever you want to call it, I'm interested to see what happens with the gaming industry and how it unfolds if this deal goes through. So if you ask me personally what I want to see happen, I want my curiosity to be satisfied and have more things to pull apart and analyze. And I'm always an advocate of not maintaining the status quo. So this will be change, and it will cause the industry to react and behave differently. And I'm all for that personally. From my reading of the tea leaves of regulation and law, all of the things that I said before are reasons why this thing is being looked at and will continue to be looked at. And in the case of the FTC, I have no problems with them pushing that look into the legal system and giving it an even more disciplined and regimented once over. And as I've said before too, my personal belief is whoever wins, whether it be Microsoft and FTC, or the FTC, I think the best thing is for, the final decision on this to come down with the power of law behind it. Whether that, end with the FTC judge or go into the federal court system.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Hamp. And, and the other thing that I do want to bring up too, that he talks about, he's like, so, Lou was pointing out the obvious. FTC would get laughed out of a federal court if they try to argue Nintendo does not compete with Xbox or Sony or with Xbox or Sony, and Sony with all this success cannot compete against last place Xbox for a game. It will keep on PlayStation for the next 10 years. So that's another thing that I've heard people say. Oh, they're not taking to a federal court because a judge would laugh it out and it'd be a done deal. And one thing you brought up too is that the administrative judges for the FTC don't always rule in favor for the FTC either. I think people think that that's the case. That's actually not true.
Correct. Right.
And then he does bring up one point here. He's not happy with my when I said I bring up people, reference people who are hardcore fans of a certain platform. I kind of say that they're kind of like on that QAnon level of conspiracy theories. He thinks it's outrageous that I say those, but I don't buck. There's some people out there that are behaving in that fashion. Conspiracy theories, nothing's grounded in reality. They're tweeting at the FTC, asking for Lena Khan to be removed, tweeting at her, harassing her over a plastic box.
Yeah, and I think the point of the statement is hold on a second. Sorry, the point of that comment is to say that those people are representing similar behavior, right, to those organizations, and behaving as if they're motivated, right, by similar dynamics. The point of the statement is, there are people running around saying that, just like one of our famous Twitter personalities said the other day, right before Sony earnings came out, that that it's rumored that Xbox is outselling PlayStation, right? And said it as if it was fact, and a lot of his cultish followers, right, tore off, waving that flag about and doing victory laps as if that was true. When there has been zero financial, economic, quantifiable, mathematical, objective evidence to indicate that that's the case. The last that we knew, the lead of PlayStation over Microsoft before those reports came out was about 9 million. And so to suddenly believe that within 1 quarter that status quo had flipped, right? That's what we talk about when we say there are acolytes within the Xbox fandom religion, right? The most the biggest corners of zealotry within that community. And the same is true for PlayStation, right? The same is true for PlayStation, right? But these personalities who can say anything, right, without a shred of truth behind it, without any corroborated evidence behind it, and that they have a number of followers who will swear that it is true and will tear off across Twitter, right, then that's a problem. And the reason why, right, I don't give Lulu any credibility is because she knows what she's doing. She's saying things and tweeting it at the FTC, tweeting it at Lena Khan, because she knows that there's a group of, quite frankly, crazies who will listen to that and will tear off to those accounts, right, saying all kinds of crazy stuff. Like, again, Lena Khan should be removed. My problem with this whole notion is that let's talk about the order of succession of the presidency of the United States, right? The chairman of the FTC is incredibly far down that chain, if they're even in that chain, right? There are other people, maybe people will claim that this is a whataboutism. There are other people who wield much more power, who have done more egregious things, which I think would be, ahead in people's minds about arguing for their removal. I don't think that the chairman of the FTC is a position that really needs to be removed. Let's also keep straight that the commissioners of the FTC do affiliate with a party, right? And so the Democrats do not necessarily have a hold on the FTC, right? Let's also say that the FTC is also subject to congressional oversight through multiple committees, right? Their behavior can be checked at any one time. Let's also keep straight that the notion of going after big tech, while they have their different reasons, is a bipartisan motivation that is championed by both the Democrats and the Republican. I posted things in Twitter. I don't know if my account still has those things up there. I think my account still shows visible until I'm fully deactivated. But I posted in many cases over the last 10 years how there has been a joint effort by both sides to go after big tech, to tamp their behavior, to temper the amount of influence that they wage on the American people. And so, again, this notion that, Lena Khan should be removed, a person doesn't have to be removed to gain a different outcome, right? We have, again, I won't say that because that may sound insulting, but in this country we have a means of checks and balances, right? We have oversight committees. We have we have the judicial branch. So there are lots of different ways by which people in different branches of the government can intervene if there's a feeling that this thing is so far out of bounds that it is just entirely unconstitutional, right? People may not like the amount of time that it's going to take. And I can't say anything to ameliorate those people's feelings. But we have a process, and it has to be worked through. So again, I think the campaigning for her removal is more about, again, of different factions and demographics within the gamer community trying to gain their desired outcome, right? Which is a feeling that if somebody different were put in seat, then this deal would go through. But again, given the facts of the matter and the facts of the case, I don't know that that's necessarily true, because you would still have the DOJ in their same position.
Yep, you would. Yep.
So.
Yeah, the other thing too is like, it's you talked about like that individual who, let's face it, just profits off of people. This is so weird that I even have to say this. Profit off of people who feel disenfranchised, and that's where that's why when I talk about, like, I give those kind of like far right wing examples, because those people are behaving that way too because they feel disenfranchised, and people are manipulating and taking advantage of those individuals, and it happens here in the gaming space. It's crazy to see it, but it does. You have this individual coming out here and saying, I forget what it was, like, there's a rumor going around. You heard it here first that the Xbox might be slightly outselling the PlayStation globally. Like, what? And I said this, like, we got the Sony numbers. The PlayStation 5 lead has increased over Xbox. We got Sony's Q3 numbers, and the one thing that I'll say is, when you put out misinformation, disinformation, like that individual does, or like other people do in the community, you're going to get exposed, because the truth will eventually come out. Especially when you're talking about numbers, you're talking about trends. Those things are going to come out, and like we saw it with the Sony CFO Hiroki Totokio. He says that with regards to the PS5 market, with regards to PlayStation 5, said PS5 market share, or says that recently in the U.S. PS5 share compared to peers has expanded significantly. He did say that. Let me a sec here. He said. I'm sorry. Let me read this quote again. I butchered the quote. I'm sorry. PS5 share compared to peers in Europe as compared to the United States, our position is higher. We are maintaining a high position in the United States. Also, in the summer, there was some narrowing of the gap, but more recently, our share has expanded significantly. So there's not much impact of the macro economy. Having said that, however, this is something dynamic, so we have to watch the situation carefully from the fourth quarter onwards. And I believe that I think PlayStation may have increased their shipment number from 18 million to 19 million. I think I got to go back. There was an increase in some numbers. Was that it? Yeah, I just want to make sure I got that right.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, like, again, like these are things that are, I always say this, Hamp, like, it's tangible things that we can see, read, things that we know, things that, that are reported on. Right. Let's say this. Go ahead, man.
And just to keep things even, again, it's not a matter, like, lots of people like to throw the accusation at us that we're, pro Sony, pro PlayStation. Again, I threw lots of heat at the PlayStation community for lots of people running around who don't understand technology or software whatsoever. Talking about the Xbox's VRR implementation and their lack of understanding of what VRR actually was and how that actually culminates from a number of specifications that are out in the IEEE space. I frequently go after PlayStation people for basically claiming that everybody should think like they do. As I was most recently in a space with people saying that nobody would be affected by the removal of the PlayStation collection, and I was like, well, again, one thing that engineers don't say is we never say never, and we never say zero or that anything's an absolute fact. There's always exceptions to the rule, and so I went after them for that. So it's not to say that this is solely an Xbox mentality, right? There are vestiges of this in the PlayStation community too. It's just that right now Sony's not out trying to buy a $70 billion company, so they're not in the news headlines over topics of this magnitude.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you, Hamp. I mean, and look, I mean, they are they're extremists on both ends. I mean, I've seen it. You know, but you're right. We probably talk more about the Xbox side because of the the pending acquisition of ABK and that kind of highlighting some of that behavior more than what we see it on the PlayStation side. You know.
Yeah, and Jeremy Shiner says nitpicking on PlayStation side, super small things. Yeah. I mean, in comparison to the Xbox thing, they are probably smaller in magnitude. If you have some bigger things you want to point out, I'm sure I probably went at the PlayStation people for those things too. I just can't recall any right off the top of my head. If you do have something larger in magnitude that you want to mention and drop in the chat, just bounce it off me.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Well, look, PlayStation numbers, very solid, Hamp. I was surprised. I know we had Falky on this past Wednesday, and we're trying to get his thoughts on what those numbers might look like, and I've talked to him since the numbers came out Thursday, but I thought that there might be a little bit of dip, considering the economic climate, but I was surprised to see the numbers that I saw from PlayStation, but I think that just speaks to the demand of the PlayStation console right now, and Sony able to meet that demand now with getting PS5s on retail shelves now, because you can pretty much find them everywhere now. Like I go online just to see where they are, and you can pretty much get them at Best Buy, on Amazon right now. Walmart has them. My local Walmart has them in stock right now. I can go in there and buy the God of War bundle for PlayStation 5 right now. So.
Yeah, so Jeremy, I'm having a hard time tracking exactly what the theme of your statements are. So Jeremy says there's always super casuals who say dumb things. They don't represent the majority. Again, if you're talking about the things that I've said, I don't think. I mean, I think a lot of those figures in the Xbox community are super casuals because we often comment about how we never see them actually playing games. But I will say, just for my own anecdotal perception, Colt Eastwood, Pacini, several others, in that community. None of them are representatives, but I will say that, when they say things, it seems like there is a groundswell of people who agree with them. And I think if you go in their thread and so much as ask a question, like not insult them, but just ask a question, you get immediately dogpiled and insulted and told to sit down. So maybe that's not representing the majority, but it certainly represents something. And Andrew Clay says, you say it's extremist on both sides, but yet you only cover the Xbox side. Again, it's BRAP show. I can't comment about like the number of episodes or whatever, but as far as I know what I speak out about, again, if there's a PlayStation thing that comes up that I think is problematic from the PlayStation side that I think is actually impactful, I definitely speak out about it.
Yeah, and we do the same thing here, Andre. And you got to remember something too. I'm also speaking to what I see on my timeline, Andre. But I've really admitted it. Hey, look, it's on both sides. But I will say, based on what I see on my timeline, again, what I see on my timeline, it seems to be a little more extreme on the other side for some of the things that Hamp just mentioned. It is very much like if you ask a question, like I got blocked by Panici, whoever that is, by asking a question. How did you arrive to those numbers? Where's the link? Show me the proof. And I got blocked. And see, that's the thing. Like when you ask them to back whatever statements they're making with facts, you say to them that's conjecture. First of all, they want to argue about conjecture, or they're just going to block you. So, but look, I mean, are they bad actors on both ends? Absolutely. Absolutely. We talked about on the show where people were upset that about Jim Ryan investing more in multiplayer. Oh, Jim's taking away first party. No, he's not. PlayStation will be fine. He's not deviating resources from making first party games. Remember that, Hamp? We talked about that.
We had a very public, very loud argument on this cast with a guest who was like Sony doesn't need to invest in porting games to PC. And I challenged that outright. And then I doubled down on that challenge when that individual tried to challenge the analog that I was bringing up. Because that person seems to tie their brain into knots when you bring up an analogy, because they can't seem to understand that analogies exist. So I don't, again, this whole notion that, we don't address problems in the PlayStation camp, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just not true. I mean, like I said, we've talked about it. We did have a guest. I've gone back and forth with with that argument of PC it's going to diminish the value of the PlayStation 5. No, it's not. We've talked about that. That was a talking point amongst many of the fandom of the PlayStation community. Like, no, it's just not.
Yeah, we had that argument here. We had the argument with PlayStation fans who were up in arms because PlayStation was building 1 million more PlayStation 4s. Geez, look how that turned out, guys.
Go figure, right?
Yeah, I mean,
imagine knowing you have a game that's going to sell a lot, and imagine wanting to put out more consoles so people could buy that console to experience that game.
Right, on the console that you could easily crank out by big numbers versus the console that you're struggling to get on the store shelves.
Yeah, imagine a company wanting to make money. I don't know about you, Hamp. I don't know anything about business. But I know about honesty and integrity. And I know that Sony...
And that's another good point, Buck, because I meant to bring that up too, right? I understand your pushback and I understand your disagreement, and I don't fault you your disagreement one iota. But to... like a lot of people who have brought up these points, right, in Xbox's favor are also people who are listeners of other Xbox-centric podcasts.
That's a great point.
One of which made mention of the thing that BRAP just mentioned, right? A podcast that said that they don't know business, but they do know honor and integrity. And so to be asked, why am I focused on a person's character more so than the merits of their case? You can look at what exactly that Xbox-centric podcast said, is because I know this person to be a person of low character and not consistent with honor and integrity. I don't give them a pass for listening to the merits of their case. So sorry to take my cue right from somebody on an Xbox-centric podcast, and I would claim, very much on that zealotry end of the spectrum. And again, as a reminder, I'm an Xbox fan. I play my Xbox a lot. You don't see me posting a ton of PlayStation content in my feed.
Hamp, we play Halo Infinite almost every night.
Right.
That's why when people come to our show and they're like, "Oh, you guys are PlayStation fanboys," I'm like, "Yeah, we're on Halo Infinite like every night. Me, you, Hamp, Slow-Mo Backslap. Sometimes Forte joins us. Deli will join us. I mean, like, we are on the tentpole franchise. We are on the franchise that is the face of Xbox. Every night playing Halo multiplayer, Halo Infinite multiplayer."
Right. So for people to say, at least for me, that I just go after Xbox. I mean, and this is, what I've said in the wake of me leaving Twitter. My point has never been advocacy for one platform or another. And as I mentioned before, and I'm sure people are tired of hearing it, but I play on PC, I play on Xbox, I play on PlayStation, Nintendo
As you
Switch.
should play on PC, sir, by the way. That's the best platform in gaming.
Android, iOS, Steam Deck, Linux, right? I play everywhere and I play everything. I am not an advocate for a given platform or a naysayer of a given platform. What I don't stand for and what I cannot stand is I can't stand lies and misinformation and disinformation. And that's the people that I go in on. Whether or not I spend most of my time going after Xbox or going after PlayStation, it's not my fault, right? What misinformation they choose on any given week to spread, right? I just speak out against the ones that I see. So there you are.
Yeah, and part of, like, if you just like perhaps been around for like 8 years, the show has, and one of the reasons why I started the show was because I wanted to offer a different perspective, because at the time there was solely like more platform specific podcasters. I'm like, I don't want to do that because one, I don't play specifically on one platform. I mean, I play mostly on PC, but I do have an Xbox. I have 2 Xbox Series X's in the house. I have 2 PlayStation 5s. I have an Oculus Quest 2. I have a Xbox Series S as well. I have 3 Nintendo Switches in the house. I mean, but I wanted to start a show that where we would talk about the different platforms we all play video games on, but also provide a different perspective. Because there is a lot of misinformation, disinformation out there by podcasters, not all podcasters, by some that you may hear us talk about, and we are here to offer a different perspective, hopefully a more informed perspective than just going out there and talking about rumors and using conjecture, and we just don't do that here.
Yeah, and I mean, Apex Predator, I think if memory serves, I think I disagree with you most of the time. But your statement, you can like Halo and not like Xbox. You can like Halo and not like Xbox. I see that as an excuse. I retract that. I do disagree with you. So, no, it's not an excuse. Again, I go back to, right, it is possible for you to feel two different ways about similar things. It is possible for those things to exist. You can absolutely say that you like Halo. And you say not like Xbox. I don't think anything that we've talked about is a matter of not liking Xbox, right? The black piece of plastic sits right over there on my table, and I play it quite often. The things that we have been talking about is not agreeing with and not liking a lot of the social discourse, which gets tilted and skewed based on which camp, right, you're in. That's what I don't understand. I don't understand the inability to talk about financial facts and economic facts and things that are quantifiable and tangible, while also not giving the latitude, while concurrently not giving the latitude for people to feel the way that they feel about a game, right? And this is what I go in on the PlayStation fans, right? A lot of the PlayStation fans, well, this was part of the argument in the spaces, right? The PlayStation fans talking about game completion percentage. And I'm like, I don't necessarily know that game completion percentage is a rubric that everybody holds as a singular holy metric, right? I don't give a shit about game completion percentage. I play games every single day, every single night, and I spend a shit ton of money in the gaming industry.
Well, hey, no S bombs. We don't want to get demonetized.
Right. Like, what does my game completion percentage have anything to do? The fact of the matter is, if you go by the Ubisoft rubric, right, which is they talk about a hardcore gamer being a gamer who plays 10 or more, plays and buys 10 or more new games a year, and plays in excess of, I think it was like 14 hours, 14, or I forget what exactly the metric, but I fall in that metric, right? That is a corporation looking at who they're listening to and who they pay attention to, right, on the market, right? That is a much more realistic rubric than the made up one that some group of people said because they're trying to fan the flames of their own PlayStation fandom, right, and be cult leaders themselves. So that is my point. Like, and when on this show, we speak out against, if we do speak out against Xbox and their corporate direction, right, the company's direction with regards to the gaming sector, that is a discussion of not being certain that they're doing what they need to do to resonate with us personally as gamers, or with the market personally as gamers, and we qualify those statements, or doing what they need to do to really be competitive. So again, I think there needs to be separation between those things.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Hamp. Great point, man. Great point. But on that note, Hamp, on that excellent point, I do want to go ahead and wrap up the show. But I want to say, look, everyone, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We had like 75 people here watching, and so thank you again, especially because this was advertised at literally at the 11th hour. But definitely appreciate everyone coming by to hang out with us. Saw some of the usuals here, and look, also want to give a big shout out to Buck, who I'm sure will post some commentary in the comment section later on when he listens to the show. But you look, Buck, we definitely appreciate the commentary. Even though we were going through your commentary, we do appreciate the dialogue. In the comment section. So thank you again. But do me a favor, everyone, hit that like button if you haven't done so already. And if you're new to the show and you like what you're listening to here, definitely subscribe, hit the bell notifications so you'll learn when we go live. And we do have a regularly scheduled BRAP every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time. So it's myself, Slow-Mo Backslap, Gaming Forte, B-Money 101, and Hamp, when he wants to join, he will hop on. Hamp, like I said, always open door policy, man. Anytime you want to jump in, man, just jump in. So, but yeah, thank you everyone again. Appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. Play some video games. More importantly, have fun doing so, because that's what gaming's all about, having fun. So until next time, We'll see you Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you.